How's everybody doing? Yay. Let's see. Can I ask this side to move forward a row? Can you all in the back move forward a bit? Thanks for coming. All right. How's everyone doing? Um, yeah, if we could, can you all move forward? The back row, move forward, just to leave some room for the. If anyone, if anyone comes in, I'd want to, or just bring these seats back, whatever you'd like to do there. Oh, all right, perfect. How's everyone today? How's the volume in the back? Good. All right. Woo. You're good back there now. They've got enough chairs to fill in. All right. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming. I have a sign in the back just to check how many people are here. If you haven't signed in, if you could do it on the way out also. Um, and how many folks, I know there's some folks here, but has everyone here been to a storytelling event before? Yay! How many new people? Yay! Okay, so take care of all those people who raised their hands. Um, so a couple of things about, today we're celebrating spoken stories, stories that create connection. And I'm Dr. Joel Ying. I teach storytelling here at the university. My students are in the audience. Yell out, yay! I love you guys. Um, I teach storytelling as healing here and some other storytelling classes in the humanities and curate a series for FGCU storytelling. We have some events coming up as well that I hope you come to with some invited storytellers, some professional storytellers who are visiting us. They'll be here next week and the week after, so we have a few weeks of storytelling for you on Tuesdays and Wednesdays coming up. A couple things, some gratitude to this art gallery. Today the exhibit is Girl Feast, and Izzy and Chloe were here and they had an opening last Thursday and presented this beautiful space to us. So a round of applause and a thank you. This art, it's digital art that they've put on the wall that represents one long table where everyone's invited to the table. You can see how eclectic their table is, and maybe you'll recognize some of your foods on the table. But it's a beautiful exhibit, so please come by, take a look at it. It's really interactive. There's some stuff to buy on the wall. There's a little nook to sit in and check out the fortune cookies with some little messages. You can answer the questions with your friends. So there's special messages in there and some other individual art as well. So thank you to the art gallery for hosting us and being this great venue for stories surrounded by art. Also, a thank you to the Seidler Foundation who give us some food for our reception and pay our storytellers. So thank you. And thank you to the Creative Writing Program, the Department of Language and Literature for their support, as well as the Department of Integrated Studies. So with that said, storytelling, spoken stories. For folks who have been here for the first time, if you have to run out to the break, there is to the left, a bathroom. Make a left, make a right. And there's a water fountain there. And let's see, other things I got to tell you. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. we have the gratitude. Oh, there's this pesky thing I have to tell every time that we do a storytelling event because it just is one of those things. You have one of these noisemakers in your pocket. If you could just like put it on vibrate, silent, stun, one of those options. And with storytelling, we love the interaction of storytelling. One of my friends calls it, it's a conversation with one person speaking, because you are conversing with me by how you pay attention, how you lean in. You know, when there's something funny said, like I say a joke, you will. So good, so well trained. So well trained. And like a cute little puppy walks into my story. So good. Oh, I love this. Love this. Or, you know, it's Halloween. Fantastic. All right. Okay. You all are professional story listeners now. I love it. I love it. So, are you ready for some stories? All right. So, there once was a professor. And every time someone asked this professor a question, he would answer with a story. Professor, how's your day? A story. Professor, how do you do this assignment? A story. Now, sometimes the stories were short, and sometimes the stories were long. Well, one day, one of the students came to office hours, and he asked the professor, he said, Professor, why is it every time someone asks a question, you answer with a story? And the professor said, well, let me tell you a story. And so he told this story that is a folk tale from the Jewish tradition. There once were two friends named Truth and Story. Now, this was a long, long time ago when such names were popular. Truth and Story. Well, when Truth came to town, people would cross the street to avoid him. They would run into their homes and slam their doors. No one wanted to speak to or even look at Truth. But when Story came to town, that was different. People would run out of their homes to greet her. They would invite her in. They would offer her food and drink and sit at her feet and hang on her every word. Well, one day, Truth came to Story and said, Why do people slam their doors on me? Why do they love you and shun me? Well, Story took one look at Truth and she immediately knew the answer. You see, Truth was walking around stark naked, completely exposed, and completely oblivious to his social deficiencies. Well, Story felt sorry for Truth. Tell you what, she said, let me dress you up and we'll walk together. Well, dressed in the fine clothes of metaphor, poetic prose, and exciting plots, Truth was a handsome sight to look at. You do clean up nicely. And with Story on his arm, Truth was invited to all the homes, served all the best foods, and now everyone listened to Truth. Truth had not realized how much he needed Story, and Story, she'd not realized how empty her life had been without Truth. You see, Truth and Story, they've been together ever since, because no one likes the naked truth. Well, that student carefully did not ask another question, but said thank you and made his way out of office hours. Today I have a set of stories for you called Folk Tales and Braided Stories. And folk tales don't need too much explanation, but they're stories passed on from folk to folk to folk in that oral tradition, and because of that, there's so many versions of folk tales. It's almost like a grand game of telephone. And it's a beautiful thing how folk tales survive when they still speak to a culture. So we have many folk tales in our culture today. But braided stories are kind of cool. It's how you put two stories together that sort of resonate together, and it's like 1 and 1 equals 4,000. They like magnify each other. So that's one example of how you could braid two stories together, right? I put the professor's story with truth and story. But I thought I'd just tell you the answer to one of my other favorite questions. Professor, what's your favorite story? Now, that's a really difficult one. I mean, I could answer like my grandmother who said, I love all my grandchildren. But sometimes we have early stories that come to us, and I like to say I have a favorite for today. And so this is one story that a friend of mine told me, and she told me a Jewish version of this story, and I looked it up and I found that it's originally a Korean folktale. So I have a Korean folktale to tell you. Now there's a Japanese version and there's other versions as folktales travel around the world and like morph into different cultures. And so I think about this because, you know, everything Korean is popular now. We have K-pop and K-drama, and now we have K-stories, and I was there first because I had this K-story, right? Okay. So when you think about stories, though, there are many, the stories of folktales are in the oral tradition. They're in the public domain, so you can adopt them and make them your own. But many people tell different folk tales, and so I'll look up different versions, find the ones that I like, put them together, and create my own version. So this is my version of the Spring of Youth. Once upon a time, there was a woodcutter and his wife. They lived together in a home at the foot of a mountain. They had all the blessings of a happy life, except for the one blessing they always wanted, the blessing of a child. But still, the couple lived happily, growing old together. You see, every day the husband would go out, he'd chop wood, the wife would collect kindling. They worked hard each day to collect enough wood for themselves and to pay the landlord. The landlord was a bitter old man, a miserly curmudgeon, who was always raising the rent. You should buy more wood. You should collect more wood. But still, the couple, yes, they lived happily, growing old together. But then the day came when the wife was too old and too weak to go out into the woods. And so the woodcutter went out alone, spending longer and longer hours each day. Well, one day, the woodcutter heard the sad song of a bluebird. He followed the song, and he found a bluebird with a broken wing. He carefully picked up the bird, he splinted the wing, and he took it home to his wife, where they cared for it and nurtured it back to health. And when it had fully healed, they took it back out into the woods, and they watched with tears in their eyes as it flew off, this time with a happy song. Well, life went back to usual for the woodcutter and his wife, collecting wood for themselves and to pay the landlord. But one day, the woodcutter again heard the song of the bluebird. He followed the bluebird. He followed the song, but when the bluebird saw him, it flew off again. He followed the bluebird deeper and deeper and deeper into the forest, to places he'd never been to before. Deeper and deeper, until he came to a mountain spring. And there, exhausted, he laid down his axe, he took a long drink, and fell asleep. When he woke from his nap, strength again filled his bones. He picked up his axe, he skipped down the mountain back home. When he arrived home and opened the door, his wife screamed, "Ah, get out of here, get out of here, we have nothing here. My husband will be home soon." And he looked at her. "Do you not recognize me, wife?" And she looked up at him, and it was indeed her husband, but years younger. His bald head was now covered with thick, dark hair. His body was now supple and strong. What happened to you?" she said. And he told her all about the bluebird and that mountain spring. "You should go there too. You could be young again." "I am too old and too weak to make the journey. It is too late for me." "But I am now young and strong. I can carry you." And so the woodcutter and his wife went out into the woods. The old woodcutter, now young, carrying his old wife on his back, they found the bluebird and followed it to that mountain spring. And there the wife took a long drink, and then another, and then another. That's enough, wife. And as she stood up, her body was again supple and lithe. Her thin gray hair was now thick and black and lush. They clasped hands and danced for joy, and hands still clasped. They skipped down the mountain back home together. Well, the next morning, the landlord arrived to collect the rent. The landlord was a bitter old man, a miserly curmudgeon. His joints were bent over, he was crippled with arthritis. With each step, he winced and shuffled in pain. When the woodcutter saw him, he felt sorry for the landlord. "Well, what happened to you?" said the landlord. And the woodcutter told him all about the bluebird and that mountain spring. "This is my property," said the landlord. "That is my spring, and you should not go there again." And with that, he turned and went off into the woods. Well, later that evening, the landlord still had not returned. The woodcutter and his wife got worried, and so they went out into the woods. They found the bluebird and followed it to that mountain spring. And there, by the spring, they found a pile of old clothes. And within the clothes, they found a newborn baby. Now the wife, she picked up the child who looked back at her with sad and longing eyes and cried. The couple, they cradled and comforted the child. Now you might say this story is about greed. You can't have too much of a good thing. But it's also about second chances. The old woodcutter and his wife, they got a second chance to grow old together, this time with the blessing of a child. And that old miserly landlord, he got a second chance too, this time to grow up with parents that loved him. And so I think about stories as we weave together, and I think about second chances. My friend who told me this story said, "People love stories about second chances." And she was right. That story captures me every time, even though I'm the one telling it. So I'd like you to think about your second chances, because I feel like folk tales are always braided stories because we can always put ourselves in them. We are every character in the story. We're every character in the story. And so we have so much to learn from inside these folk tales as we weave and we braid and we put ourselves in them. So I'd like to tell you a new story. Would that be okay? It's kind of new. All right. So another question I sometimes hear, Professor, not always from professors, or not always from students, but how does a physician become a storyteller? A good question, right? Well, I always start out with, first, you go to medical school. It's a difficult journey just to become a storyteller. Well, I wanted to tell you my story of how I came here. I had worked in a bunch of different places. I was doing what we call temp doctoring, and it's called locum tenens, and traveling to different places. I went to areas around Yellowstone. I went to other places out in the Pacific Northwest, and it was so beautiful. But I wanted to come back home to Florida, where I grew up. And so that's how I ended up back in Naples. And the job I found was as a hospitalist. Now, hospitalist, or hospital medicine, was a new thing then, especially in Naples. And during season, the hospitals exploded. They were so busy with so many people coming who were old and sick. And so they got admitted. And so the hospitals were really, really, really busy during season. And so they hired these doctors who would work in the hospital. And when they got discharged, they would go back to their regular doctor. Well, I joined this hospital group, this hospitalist group, and it was a busy practice. They were short-staffed. It was a startup group, and I was joining them. I was excited. It was a new thing, and it was like being a resident again, which is very busy, let me tell you. 80-hour weeks. But I really, really, really enjoyed just being busy. I loved taking care of patients. I loved helping people and seeing people get well. But between the being understaffed and between my own workaholic habits, something else happened as I began to get more and more exhausted, physically, emotionally, mentally, and not feeling effective anymore and not feeling like I really enjoyed this job anymore. And so I was beginning to feel burnt out. And maybe you felt that too under any kind of chronic stress. Well, I decided to make a change. I decided to do something different, which is something I still do part-time. I decided to open my own office, a private practice that's holistic. I have control over my own hours. It's 9 to 5. I set up the office, did everything, and I went to the office, and I was there from 9 to 5 every day for a couple weeks, and I realized it was just me and the four walls. In medical school and residency, they do not teach you much about business and marketing, so I had to learn quickly. And that's when I went to do local talks at health food stores around town. And it was a way for me to get clients, talk about my new office, my new practice. Well, this worked out pretty well, and I had, a bunch of health food stores to go to in a bunch of places, and some fun topics to talk about with, holistic medicine and the different alternative things that I could also do. Well, one of my friends came. He'd known me from some other circles, and he said, you should join Toastmasters. It helped me, and it could really help you. Now, I don't know if you know what Toastmasters is, but it's a group, it's a nonprofit organization that has clubs or groups all around the country, in fact, the world, and they help people get better at public speaking. And it's a great organization. I really enjoy being a member of that organization because let me tell you, he was right, I really needed them. If you had seen me one of those first talks, I was up here on stage and I was hanging on to that lectern with my white knuckles. I had my notes in front of me and I was reading, and it was like I was holding on to all my words because the people in the back could hardly hear me. In fact, one of my storytelling friends, who's a great friend now, she tells me, when I first saw you, I thought, he'll never be any good. Yes, she did tell me that. But she also says, you've greatly improved. Now, it's a really interesting thing to be a part of Toastmasters. I remember distinctly my first meetings, and I remember those first 3 speeches that I gave because it is, in fact, I love to go back to Toastmasters and watch people tell those first speeches because I call it failing forward. It's a new thing. You never do it quite right, but you get back up and you do it better the next time and better the next time, and it's like an exponential growth. And I go back and go to Toastmasters and I help coach people because I love to see them grow. I love to see them excel and see their confidence just expand. And that's what happened to me in Toastmasters. Imagine a place where you go where everyone is there to improve themselves. Everyone talks about something they care about or something they're passionate about. And they're always so positive. They clap at everything you say. And it's a place where you give a 5 to 7 minute speech, usually just short speeches. And it's information content. And then you get an evaluation by someone in the group, usually some positive feedback. It helps you grow and very encouraging. And so this was an organization that really helped me grow. And about a year or 2 into this, I went to an advanced Toastmasters meeting. And that was the place that I saw someone, instead of telling a speech with information, trying to get their message across, they told a story. And I remember the feeling of watching them tell a story of 20 minutes of something coming out of their head, coming, just like coming through them. I was like, 20 minutes in your head? How did you do that? And it was something with, setting, characters, plot, tension. I was on the edge of my seat, and I was so captivated that I thought, I want to be able to do that. Well, it took maybe another couple of months to a year that I finally got up to the next project in Toastmasters. And at that time, they do it differently now. They had a manual for storytelling, and one of the projects was to tell a folk tale. I chose a story called Brother Anansi and the Tar Baby. And simply because I'm from Jamaica. And I really resonated with that story. And so I learned the story, and I remember I got up on stage and I told the story, and something happened. These characters and voices came out of me, and I had no idea where they came from. When I sat down, I literally looked around and said, what just happened? Because it was as if ego and nervousness and everything stepped out of the way, and I was just this channel for a story. And the story came through, and I felt like I was in the flow, alive. And I thought to myself, I want more of that. And so yes, that was the moment that I decided, I was going to devote some resources to something I enjoy. And there's this crazy thing that happens when you enjoy one thing in your life. It tends to overflow into the other things. So if I was going to wish upon you anything, that you find what you're passionate about. Well, a very rare thing, right, to have someone have two callings in their life, but to be a physician and to be a storyteller. Well, I decided to devote time and energy to crafting stories. I started to go to workshops and start telling stories. And that's when a group of storytellers discovered me, or I discovered them. We kind of discovered each other. And it was a local group, and we decided we all want to learn storytelling. And we knew that there was one other thing. We needed an audience. One of my friends says about producing events and having events that, if you guys weren't out there, we'd be talking to ourselves. So we created these events at a local tea house once a month. And so once a month, I was looking for stories based on a theme of the month. And all four of us, it was less stress, all four of us would come together and have a story. And it was 4 different voices. And it was a great, grand time because we would tell stories and they would have high tea afterwards. It was lovely. Or actually high tea before. Well, Tea and Stories, or Tea and Tales as we call it, was a huge success. And so I started producing events at other theaters and other places because, yes, we needed an audience. But I started telling stories to anyone who would listen and crafting my stories. And I remember one of my first personal stories is my teacher story that my students know. And I would tell that to everyone who would listen and try to craft it and change it, because stories for a spoken story artist, they're alive. They change based on who's in the audience. They change based on who I am at that moment. And I will tell the story differently at different times. But so that story was still in process, still changing. And I remember I went on a trip to Boston, and I was visiting a friend. And I said to him, I remember because we were eating, we went to a restaurant, we're eating on this lawn outside and lots of people picnicking. And I said, can I tell you a story? I just got this, new thing that I'm doing. It's called storytelling. And he said, yeah, sure. So I told this story about this teacher, this mentor that inspired me. And I remember telling the story. And I remember afterwards just looking down and going, and that's my useless skill. And when I looked up, I saw his face and his eyes were just staring at me. His jaw was on the ground. He said, Joel, that is not a useless skill. He completely reframed what I thought usefulness meant. Because at that time, I thought usefulness meant, oh, it had to help my career, it had to make money, it had to, be useful. But something that touches hearts, touches minds, is really, really useful and powerful to create community. And I'm really grateful for him for just that one moment. Well, I started to continue to tell stories to anyone who would listen. And that's when I decided I would start doing contests. You see, Toastmasters has an international speech contest. Now, this is an inspiring speech. It's usually it's usually also got a bit of humor in it. And you can look online for the world champion public speaker every year and find their speeches. What they do in 5 to 7 minutes is completely amazing and inspiring. Well, I had a story that I had put together. I've been practicing it and honing it and crafting it for a couple years. And so I had a head start on people who had just written their speech. And so I was excited by this story. In fact, my students just heard it. It's called Balm of Gilead. And I told this speech at the club level, and I won. And so I went to the area level, and I won. And so I went to the division level, and I won. Now, the next level is district, and less than 1% of Toastmasters go to the district level. And so I was going to be part of that, less than 1%. I was so excited. I had this speech, and I had visions that I would be the world champion public speaker. Well, I honed and crafted that story, and I got on stage with 9 other amazing, talented speech writers, speech crafters, and I told my story, and I didn't win. They wanted something a little more humorous, a little more different, and I took that in stride, but it was a great experience, and it was an amazing, amazing time to have a speech and really craft it and hone it and get it to a place. Well, I started to enter more contests and go to more places, and one of my friends took me to the National Storytelling Festival. Has anyone been to Storytelling Festival? Oh, yay, I get to talk about it. So the National Storytelling Festival is in Jonesboro, Tennessee, in a town of about 10,000. During that long weekend from Thursday to Sunday, it doubles in size. They put up circus-type tents all around town. There's about 6 of them. And the largest one has raised stage, so like the podium has microphone for one person, this huge PA system. And there are about 600 to 700 seats in that tent. I mean, it's huge. And I remember sitting in that audience, sitting in that large tent and looking around and realizing that we were one organism. We were laughing together, we were holding our breath together. And I was just amazed to be a part of this storytelling experience because we were part of a community. Like there's so much community in story. And so I hope that one day you'll go to a storytelling event because I have some flyers up here for the Florida Storytelling event, which is in January in Mount Dora, a little bit closer, where I'm the festival director. Little plug. But something happened after I went to a storytelling event for 4 days, listened to stories for 6 hours a day, and came home, and I realized my brain had changed. My brain had changed. It was as if I had absorbed story all of a sudden, like story was suddenly a different thing, and I could see story everywhere. It was an amazing experience. Well, I continued to enter showcases at the festivals, and I actually got into another contest at the Timpanogos Storytelling Festival, which is in Salt Lake City. It's another large storytelling festival, and if you want to go to a storytelling festival out west, this one is in a botanical gardens, like a spectacular botanical gardens. There are like 6 or 7 gardens. One of them is a secret garden. I won't tell you all the secrets. But the other one's an Italian garden. So this will tell you about the rest of the garden. There's like a bathtub-sized bowl of water, and it flows down into like 40 other bowls coming down these steps. At the top is a statue of Venus, I think, and flowers going down the sides. That's just one of the gardens. So imagine a place like that filled with tents and stories. Well, I got to go there. I had submitted a video, and I was in their contest, and I got to get up on stage with 6 other people to present another story. And I remember being really excited, being on stage. Let us go backstage. Storytelling communities are so welcoming. They brought me backstage. The people talked to me. They're like, "Oh, we love you. Oh, you're amazing. Oh, we're so excited. Is there anything we could do for you? Just let us know." And these were the storytellers who were going to perform on stage, who were actually hired to be there. I was just in a contest. So that's just how friendly and open they are. I entered that contest. I got up on stage. I gave it my all, and I got second place. And it was a huge, beautiful, wonderful experience, but I didn't win. But I came back to Naples. I was doing stories, going to workshops, but now it was summer. And everyone live around here? Y'all know what happens in summer? It's really hot, so everyone leaves. I don't produce events in the summer because there's not many people here to come to those events. So it's downtime. I think about it as, you know how people up north, they say they hibernate in the winter? We hibernate in the summer. We just stay inside, we're melting. Well, that's the time I decided I would use to practice my stories and develop new material and work on new things. And so I went to a Toastmasters meeting, and at that time they had a humorous contest happening. And I went to a club and said, "Let me try some new material, let me do some new things." And I remember I put some new things together, and usually I take well-crafted material there to practice my stories, but this was new stuff, and I wanted to try it out. And I remember the evaluator started her talk, said, "This is not up to the usual quality of stories that you bring to us, and I do not think that you should tell this story again." And I just kind of smiled and realized that, okay, the art of evaluation, the art of coaching people is to really encourage them. And she thought she was evaluating to the level of my expertise, but she wasn't evaluating to the level of where the story was. And I feel like if you can't find gold in a story to tell people where they can grow something, then and encourage someone, you failed as an evaluator, you failed as a coach. But in Toastmasters, we're all new to this. We're learning both how to tell speeches and we're learning how to evaluate. So I, take it in stride. But I did take it in stride. I smiled and I left there and, dusted myself off. But I had just lost some contests. I had, and I was just feeling I don't know if you've ever had those nagging voices come up in your head that go, I don't know if I'll ever be any good at this. I don't know if I'll ever get to be on the national stage anywhere. And I hope that you all have some passions in your life, but sometimes it can be really distressing and really painful when the thing that you love becomes the thing that you avoid. And I started to not really want to do stories anymore. And I realized something about myself, that I needed to fall in love with stories again. I needed to change the energy around. I needed to do something different. And so, my students know this, I have a secret mantra for you. You excited? So when you're in your life and you have a time where things are rough and the passion is waning and you need some new energy to make a change, there's a secret mantra. But it's not that secret because everyone knows it. They just don't know they know it. So it's a secret you can tell it to everybody. So I want you to repeat after me. You ready? Or just say it with me. Okay. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Yes, it's a secret mantra. And you ask me why? It's because I was at that place where I knew that I was stuck in the water. I wasn't rowing anywhere, and if I didn't row anywhere, I wasn't going to go anywhere because the water was still. And so I decided to row, row, row my boat in the direction of my passion. I had already made that change. I had already decided to devote energy and time to this passion because it was fun, because I enjoyed it, not because it made me money, not, I had given up those reasons when I decided to enter the world of storytelling, this new calling, this new passion. But this mantra reminded me that, whoa, you got to start rowing again. You got to row, row, row. But I had to find my passion again. So I'm row, row, row my boat gently down the stream. And finding that stream was a challenge. I decided I needed to fall in love with story again so I could be merrily, merrily, merrily going down that stream. And I dusted off all my stories, all my favorite stories, and I called up people I knew and I said, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story. Can I tell you a story? I started to tell stories to all my friends. I gathered some groups, I gathered people, and the thing that I had decided that was really, really important at this time in my storytelling career was no more contests. Don't judge me. I needed to avoid that place because the biggest judge was myself. And I had this idea that in the world of storytelling that I just entered, I needed to have a goal, and that goal needed to be, I'm going to be on the stage of the National Storytelling Festival because that seems to be the top and the goal of where you want to go. And I realized we all have different places that we're going to go. And as long as we go merrily, 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 and we stay with the fun and we stay with the enjoyment, then we can keep going. So I'm rowing my boat gently down that stream, finding my passion, getting a new direction. Merrily, merrily, merrily. And slowly, things began to improve. I fell in love with story again. And that's what led me to Florida Gulf Coast University. Yay! I found a friend of a friend who was working here as a professor. And I decided I wanted to take storytelling to a new audience. Naples is pretty much retired, and I thought, young people, new people. Story has really healed me, and I wish I found this art sooner. Because this art is the art of healing, it's the art of connection, it's the art of how we create community. And we found, we got in touch with the John Lasciuto, the art gallery here, was really welcoming and became our venue. So thank you, shout out to them. Yay, to this art gallery. And my friend Lori Cornelius, Professor Lori Cornelius in the Department of Language and Literature, another shout out to her because she said, yeah, let's make this happen. So she was my sponsor here. I was volunteering and I created some open mics, and we had students in the audience, professors, people from the community, everyone, and we had different generations, different stories, different walks of life, and all of them coming in and telling different stories, and it was just a really beautiful space of connection and community and sharing of wisdom. And those are the places that I wanted to create, places where it was safe for story. Well, I would open those events with a story. And luckily, because I was opening, it was not a contest. Don't judge me. I just get to tell my story. Well, my co-producer said, after a semester doing that, said, you should teach. And I said, what would I teach? She said, storytelling, of course. I said, how would I teach that? I don't have a degree in that. She said, what degree do you have? I said, well, I'm an MD. And she thought for a moment. You know how you can almost hear people thinking? She was thinking. And then she says, well, that's a terminal degree. Now, I'm a doctor, and I said to her, I do not like the word terminal. What does that mean? So she told me that in the world of academia, a terminal degree is one that you can't go further with. So it is a degree that you could teach with. So I was like, oh, okay. So she walked me over to the chair of the Department of Integrated Studies and floated the idea of a class called Storytelling as Healing, integrating two things that I love, right? The healing arts and storytelling, putting them together, and giving me a way to teach storytelling in the university setting. Now, I have to tell you that there is an irony here, because when I decided that I would devote time and energy to storytelling, I decided that the stream, to go downstream with that, was not to go back to school. You know, after 4 years of college, after 4 years of medical school, after 4 years of residency, now being a doctor, I thought, that's going upstream. I don't want to go back to school. So there's an irony that I teach it here in school. But it doesn't mean that, you know, for a long part of my life, downstream meant going back to school and finishing my school. But this time it meant something different. And so I still pinch myself and I go, wow, you're teaching in a school, how weird. So I'm back here teaching at a university, and I remember going to that first class, and I do this exercise with students. I have them come up with memorable moments, right? And then I divided them up into pairs, and I had them trade those stories together. And one of those students gave me the reason why I keep teaching. Because at the end of it, you know, everyone had shared their story. I gave them their time, and I started debriefing. How was that exercise? What do you think? What did you notice? What did you learn? And the student raises his hand, and he says, you know, I talk to people all day, sometimes for 30 minutes at a time. I'm all over campus talking to people, and we don't really talk about much. And I just talked to this person for 5 minutes, and now they know my grandmother. Stories are how we connect. And I was teaching the art of connection. I still remember when that first day was over, and I thought to myself, wow, I get to tell stories. I get to listen to stories. I get to talk about storytelling. And they pay me. Life is but a dream. So if you're stuck in one of those moments and you need to change your life course and you need a little bit of energy, please start singing. Because it's a mantra that'll get you through. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Great job. Give yourselves a round of applause. So that's partially my origin story. And do you think you could, just be kind to me for a moment and sing a round of that? Because row, row, row your boat is a round. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. You got this, okay. So let's see, we need 4 groups. So let's see. Over here, you're gonna be one group. How are we gonna do this? Okay. Okay, one group here, the first 2 rows, the next 2 rows, and the last 4 is another group, okay? So I'm gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm gonna have you start with row, row, row your boat, and then while you go to the next verse, you're gonna go to row, row, row your boat, and then you're gonna go to row, row, row your boat, And then you're going to go row, row, row your boat. We're going to sing a few rounds together. The secret of this is to listen to your group. Like, listen to your group so you're all singing the same line, same rhythm. All right. And then after we sing a couple rounds of this, all at different places, I'm going to go to the first group, and when they get to Life is But a Dream, I'm going to have them stop, and then you're going to stop at Life is But a Dream, and Life is But a Dream, and Life is But a Dream. Think it's going to work? We're willing to try it, right? Yeah. All right, okay. Okay, ready? Here we go. Row, row, row your boat. 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 Row, row your boat. Row, row, row your boat. Row, row, row your boat. The family that sings together stays together. Thank you. I told you, I was telling my class earlier that I went to a workshop on building a vocal community, and it's just amazing how singing together loosens us up and makes us community. And I feel that we live in a culture of superstars and artists, and songs belong to people. But when you go back to community cultures, like in African cultures, they have community songs, and the songs are meant to be sung together. Those songs are meant to be sung together. They're kind of like stories, and they bring us together. So I hope you'll sing together. All right. I think it's time to lighten things up a little. What do you think? I think that stories, it's really important to have a little bit of tension, figure out where the story is going, have people on the edge of their seat, a little suspense. But people also like to learn something. So you want to learn something? Okay. All right. So here we go. How do you make, maybe I should start off this way. Professor, how do you make Jamaican rum punch? Jamaican rum punch. Anybody out there know the recipe? Oh, we have one person. Okay, all right. Let me share with you my version. You're all going to repeat it together, okay? All right. This recipe is actually pretty famous. 1 of sour. 2 of sweet. 3 of strong. 4 of weak. All right. So that's the recipe. Now, I know you're wondering, how does this work? Let me explain. So that 1 of sour is 1 part of something sour. Maybe some lime juice or some lemon juice. 2 of sweet is 2 parts of a sweet, simple syrup. Maybe like a strawberry syrup like grenadine. 3 of strong. Now this is Jamaica. Strong. Rum, rum, rum. All right. Now 4 of weak is something to dilute it all, something to make it palatable. So you might, so maybe some pineapple juice or some water, some ice, some seltzer water. So you mix it all together, you pour yourself a glass and drink. Ooh. So this is a famous recipe from Jamaica. In fact, you might find it all over the Caribbean. And I think of it as a healing recipe. Yes, this is a recipe for life. Now, before you all run out and try it, yes, before you will run out and try it, let me explain. 1 of sour. That was great. In my life, the sour came at 6 years old. My life collapsed in the way that a universe can collapse into a black hole. You see, I grew up in the vibrant, lively, beautiful culture of Jamaica. Surrounded by parents and grandparents and cousins and aunts and uncles and aunts and uncles and aunts and uncles and aunts and uncles and so many aunts and uncles. It was years later that I realized that most of them were not actually related to me. You see, in Jamaica and in many other cultures, we use the term aunt and uncle as a term of respect for someone who's older than you and like family. Now, it takes a village to raise a child, and these aunts and uncles, they took their role very seriously, imparting some wisdom, some teaching, or maybe even some discipline. It was the way of the village. Well, at 6 years old, I was surrounded by this family, this village that extended and extended and extended. But then, my world collapsed. You see, my parents decided to move from Jamaica to Florida. And they decided to leave to find a better place that would be safer for their kids. Well, when they came here, my world collapsed into a nuclear family that included just my mother, my brother, and me. My dad had sold a business, and he was committed to transitioning it. So he would stay in Jamaica and only come back for long weekends once a month for the next year. It was a sour time of momentous change. I remember feeling shocked, disoriented, confused. I was thrown into this whole different culture, speaking this different dialect, and I was surrounded by strangers. I had lost the support of my village. Two of sweet. The head of my village was my sweet grandmother, and of all the people I would miss her the most. Now, she would come back and visit us in Florida for extended stays, maybe like a few weeks to a month at a time. And she came to help my mom settle into this new life. She'd help my mom navigate the bus system, the grocery store, enrolling us in school, meeting the neighbors. And the house in Florida, I have to tell you, my dad, he bought it sight unseen. And he had two requirements for this house. You see, one, it had to be near schools. My mom didn't know how to drive yet. We didn't have a car. And so I walked to school. The elementary school was right there across the street. The middle school was down across another street. I walked to school my whole life. Well, the other requirement, it had to have a rice cooker. We had an Asian diet and had rice almost every day, and my mother was famous for burning rice. Well, that house in Florida, it was old Florida style. How many of you have seen old Florida style houses? A bunch of you, yeah. Low ceilings, narrow rooms, kind of dark. And, there were screens on the windows and a large backyard to play in. And I remember the house in Jamaica. It had high ceilings, white walls, plenty of sun and light coming in, cross ventilation. And there were bars on the windows and doors, and we barely went outside. And I remember in Florida looking at those windows and those screens thinking, is that even safe? Well, we got used to this new life. My grandmother came, helped us settle in. And one of those later visits that she came, my mom had gotten a car. Now, Bobby was a two-door, two-tone brown Mustang. Back when you named cars. Now, he did have some rust on the edges, which made him like three tones. Now, I'm just curious. Now, how many people have named their car? Oh, yay, it's still a thing. Well, my grandmother was helping my mom navigate the roads, learning how to drive. And, well, there was that first time that Bobby needed gas. Well, in Jamaica, all the gas stations are full service. Someone else pumps the gas. Here, they were all self-service. They didn't know how to pump the gas. Well, they went to the gas station. They pulled up behind someone. They watched exactly what he did. And then they pulled up to the pump. And the first problem was finding the gas tank. In this car, it happened to be behind the license plate. Well, after that enterprise, they started pumping gas for what seemed like a really long time. And when they went to pay, they had pumped barely $1. Very little gas. Well, they were so embarrassed that they drove off and went to the next gas station. Now, my grandmother, she loved to tell that story, and I still remember the way that she would throw her head back and laugh, because every story was just a new adventure. You know, everything was a new adventure, a new story waiting to happen. And for her, everything was joyful and funny and beautiful. And I think about that 2 of sweet as the sweet things that make you smile. 3 of strong. I don't remember exactly what happened, but my grandmother, she had visited, and it had been an extended stay, and I was out in the backyard playing, and she came out to tell me something. Now, I knew she was leaving. I saw her packing, but she said, I don't know when I'll be back again, especially for an extended stay. You see, she explained that she was moving from Jamaica permanently up to Canada to help take care of my youngest cousin, her youngest grandchild, who was just born. Well, when she left, she put something in the palm of my hand and she closed it. And I remember opening my hand and seeing this travel-sized package of peanut M&Ms. Still one of my favorite candies today. When my grandmother, when she left, they packed off and went to the airport. I remember taking that travel-sized package of peanut M&Ms and going to the backyard. There was a sprinkler nook where you couldn't see me from the house and you couldn't see me from the street. I remember watching those blades of grass move and the sun set, and looking at that package of peanut M&Ms and thinking, this is magic medicine. The prescription, take 1 a day. Take them all, otherwise it might come back. I was rationing them so they would last. And as that milk chocolate, that sweetness melted in my mouth, I swallowed the pain in small doses, sometimes squeezing out a drop of sadness. You see, the 3 of strong is the strength, support, and connection of unconditional love, love, love. As that chocolate melted in my mouth, I thought of my grandmother and love, love, love. 4 of week. I don't remember that last peanut M&M. Life got busy. There was school with homework and new things to do and new friends. There were the new neighbors, new aunts and uncles to help take care of us after school, who would give us our first Christmas tree. And then another place to celebrate birthdays. There were the weekly trips to the library with my mother to bring in new ideas, new books, new things. And then there were the summer vacations back in Jamaica to give us a new dose of family. You see, the 4 of week is time. It is weak in the way of water, in that it dilutes all things. It dilutes those powerful emotions and makes them bearable. Now, this recipe is famous in Jamaica. And yes, I think of it as a healing recipe, because it reminds me that when I meet the 1 of sour, and we will all meet the pain of loss in life, it reminds me to look for the 2 of sweet, the sweet things that make you smile, like those sweet M&Ms or my sweet grandmother. But it also reminds me not to get stuck in that cycle of addiction from pain to sweet to pain to sweet to pain to sweet. But to look for the three of strong. And if others are not reaching out like my sweet grandmother, it reminds me to reach for that strength, support, and connection of unconditional love, love, love. And finally, 4 of week. This recipe reminds me to trust in time, that life goes on, that the pain of loss will heal, and joy will return again someday. So this is a healing recipe from Jamaica, and I hope it helps you as much as it's helped me in whatever way you decide to use it. So cheers, if you'll repeat after me. 1 of sour, 2 of sweet, 3 of strong, 4 of weak. Cheers. Thank you. Ooh, bless you. So I wanted to weave together some braided stories, and that one's braided with a little recipe. I think all stories are braided together. And I just wanted to open up some time for some questions, some quick questions, because I'm running over time. But and on these braided stories, I think that every story is a braided story, because every story you can insert yourself into, you can insert your life into. Question. How often do you have these forums? So I have some visiting storytellers coming in the next couple of weeks. So we have open mics, visiting storytellers. Everything's on FGCUstorytelling.com. And we have about 20 events for the semester. So, sorry, the year. So 10 events this semester. Yeah. Yes, they did finally figure out how to pump gas. My mom got very good at it. She drove all over after that. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, I drove into Jersey once, and it's all full service. They won't let you pump. And I got really confused. I'm like it was the reverse happening. I'm like, what do you do? You mean I just sit in the car and you pump? What do we do? Other questions? Oh, good question. Good question. Yes, one day I woke up as I was thinking about storytelling and realized that as a doctor, I am a story listener. I am a story collector. That's what I do. And, but also I sort of reframed doctoring into storytelling by thinking, wow, I listen to stories, I co-create a new story, and I offer a story of healing to my patients. And, we have options as we co-create that story. So I do sometimes say I practice less and less right now. I've been doing a little more teaching and taking some time off. And I remember that thing I said about not going back to school? I'm back in school. I'm in the English master's program, so I've been taking some classes, so that's the other reason I take some time off, to put some humanities courses on my resume so that I can teach in my discipline rather outside of my discipline with just storytelling. So. But to answer the second half of your question, yes, so I do sometimes tell anyone, including my patients, can I tell you a story? Often that, I love the Spring of Youth that I told you, that Second Chances, beautiful story to sometimes share. Other questions? The next storytelling. In next semester. I forgot the date exactly, but it won't be till next year. I'll be doing a set of stories that I call Jamaica One Love. It's March, yes, it is March. Okay, Jamaica One Love, and so it'll be stories of growing up in Jamaica, and oh, and I'll be telling stories. There's a group of us. Some of you saw Tamiami Tale Tellers here. They're going to have a celebration in Fort Myers at Peace Community Church, and I'll put it on the website fgcustorytelling.com. You can look there and like link to it. But it is an event that happens around the world. Actually, people tell stories on that day all over the world at different events at a celebration. So it's a fun time. Mary Lou Williams will be there, so you'll see her. Yes, yes. She'll be so happy. She'll be so tickled. I have to tell her. Oh, I had another question. Mm. Um, to be a good listener. To be a good listener makes you a very good storyteller. Uh, one, just listening to see where the stories are, but two, listening to see where people lean in, and you learn the art of stories by telling stories. You know those people who always hold court at events? There's like, they're at a social gathering and they're telling a story and there's like 20 people around them. Do you think that was the first time they told that story? They've been practicing it every time they go to a party. And it changes depending on who's there. You know, they're listening. They'll tell the story a different way. So this art of spoken stories, it's not the same as writing. We don't speak the same way we write. So to just talk to people, tell them stories, tell them about events and figure out. But also exactly what I did when I went to a storytelling festival. Listen to other storytellers. Like your mind will expand into how many different ways there are to tell stories, because there is not one way to do it. This genre of storytelling that I am in particular is about crafting stories that are universal, that meet a universal audience. You know, if I tell a story that just speaks to young folks, then I've excluded half my audience, right? Well, or just to women, or just to men, or just to one political party, or, you know, that's what speeches do. You know, they're targeted for your audience. But in story, we want to be as universal as we can. We want to create a message that speaks to everyone. But I don't force the message down your throat. Stories are about offering you a new way of seeing the world, and from your frame of reference, whatever wisdom you take out of it, you know, that's yours. Yeah. Did that answer your question? Um, uh, I don't. I have, like when I have my students tell personal stories, I try to see how they tell stories and they see me tell stories and look for their own style. There are people on the national circuit who sit in a chair, they don't move their body at all, they tell a story, and you cannot stop listening. You are in their story. There's other people who like move up and down the stage and they're just hugely theatrical, and they're just as riveting. So there's so many different styles that I think that finding your own way of telling stories, something that fits your personality, the more that you are yourself, the more that we will love you. It's about sharing who you are up here. So it's different from theater. There's no, you know, this is me on stage. But for the introverts, do not be alarmed. You can be up here too. My friend, who's, what's his name? Donald Davis is an amazing storyteller. Look him up online. He has a great TED Talk for our visitors. He he says that, most people think I am an extrovert because I'm up here on stage, but I'm an introvert. See, there's this huge distance between you and me, and I'm safe up here on stage. And actually, it's true. It's kind of interesting. I have time to think and practice my stories, and I have, there's this like understanding of space that I have in this contract of you as the audience. So it's a really interesting space that's also inviting to all the introverts out there as well as the extroverts. So it's a fun space. Thoughts on stories? Thank you so much for being such an amazing, amazing audience. So, I appreciate you. A couple announcements. So next week is Kim White Camp here in the same place. She'll be here on Tuesday and Wednesday. And the week after, I have Kuniko Yamamoto. So we have 3 weeks of storytelling coming up. My students say, yay! They are going to be on stage in a showcase. So come back. It's Wednesday, November. I forget. It's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Sorry, the week before Thanksgiving. That Wednesday. And they'll be at the Veterans Pavilion outside. So, all right. Oh, one last question? Last question. I have for my class the upper level storytelling is healing class, and we love it. I had a retired airline attendant. They call themselves Kiwis because they're birds that don't fly, and and she was writing a book, and just the different generations and stories are really rich. So I would encourage you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you all. See you next week.